Charizard seems to have really made a statement in the last couple of tournaments. It's won a lot of people over, where we've seen 5 of the top 8 deck lists in Curitiba be Charizard builds. We've seen Arc Zards with Pidgeot, but also we've seen Forest Sealstone lists with Entei, Luminion, Quad Arven, and still that Pidgeot EX package. But I want to take you back to the Barcelona special event, where we saw Alberto Benvenga get a top 4 placement with the Lost Zone build of Charizard. This was the top seed after day 1, and also had a very safe record IDing into top cut in day 2, and was eventually vanquished, I believe it was by the Rapid Strike Urshifu build, but had a really dream run, to be honest, with the deck, and really brought this to the limelight. I have made a few adaptations from this list, but this is where the concept came from. And we also gain a 70 hit point Charmander from the 151 expansion, which gives me even more reason to try out this archetype, because you're that much more safe against Lost Mine into the Tina matchups and the Turbo Lost Zone matchups. So I'm really encouraged by this performance. Let's take a look at the list that I'm going to be playing, though. I have tried to streamline a little bit of the list. Obviously, we have the new Charmander in here, but you'll notice the main thing I've changed is that I have cut away the 2 Water Energy, because I feel like it doesn't come off often enough. Yes, it puts your opponent in that strange position where if they see water, they then have to play around it and put Manaphy down. But I'm pretty okay with that not being the case, to be honest with you. Cutting the 2 Mirage Gate and the 2 Water Energy does open up a lot more space for us to just be as consistent as possible, really. We are playing a Raihan to help cherry pick candy combos, as well as the Colress. We have Roxanne, a couple boss, and I am playing that A-Spec Pokégear because ultimately the deck really is reliant on the Colress itself, especially in the opening stages where we want to be pressurizing with Cram in the opening. So that's really nice. We have a decent amount of switch outs with the carts, the ropes, the switch, and the stadium of choice is going to be the Artazon Stadium, because we are quite setup based. Really good to get multiple Comfey established, really good to get Cram in the opening stages. There'll be a lot of matchups where we need to Manaphy, and of course you want to get multiple Charmander. So it's quite a resource intensive deck. That's why you're seeing quite a high ball search count, as well as the 3 stadiums. And of course we need to unlock our abilities so we can use the Infernal Rain from Charizard EX to accelerate these Fire Energy. This card is just so impressive. I think that's becoming more and more apparent as more results fly in with different variations of the deck. At this stage we've seen success from Lost Zone builds of Charizard, Arc Pidgeot builds, and Forest Sealstone builds of Charizard. So it's clearly like a stupidly statted Pokemon that just does the right stuff in the game, especially because it thins the deck so nicely of these Fire Energy. It's similar to like Lugia Archeops, where once you've used a Charizard or 2 throughout the game, then your deck consists of just your item and supporter cards. So you just end up with really good cards for the remainder of the game. Even if you are getting hand disrupted, you're drawing back into more pieces that can see more cards with Greninja or with Comfey, and just all you're hitting is your supporters or your switch outs essentially, which is just so helpful for this deck. So yeah, I'm a big believer of the Lost Zone variant. The key reason why I like this deck in particular is that I feel it's safer into, firstly, the Gardevoir matchup. As we saw in Brazil, there was the Mawile package being inserted to secure the Gardevoir matchup. It's not that inherently strong for you. You're having to rely on this backdoor, oops, you weren't playing a tech card for Mawile style card, whereas I feel like we have a much more stable matchup with the Cram Sable package here, where we just have early game pressure much more easily. We don't rely on turn 2 candy combos, and we're also using a single prize Pokemon, so the opponent can't just bounce back with reversal detonation. You're forcing them to just take a 1 prize route at a time. You also have that sneaky Lost Mine shenanigans here and there, which is still a huge headache for the opponent. And of course, we are representing that dark type coverage and a huge amount of hit points, which is awkward still for Gardevoir players to get through, especially if you're playing around reversal energy. It can be really tricky for the opponent. And whenever you can have a Charizard boss play, it's going to be hugely difficult for the opponent to come back from that, because they're forcing even more multi-prize Pokemon into play, which is huge. So I feel like you're better into Gardevoir without having the sneaky, whoops, they aren't playing a tech, because it's one of those things where Mawile's come out to play again. Now it's going to be far less of a win condition, because people are going to respect the card and force Gardevoir players to play 59 card decks. So thanks for that, Brazil. But also, I feel like you're favouring the mirror match now that it's becoming more apparent that there will be more Charizard decks in the game. because we have the early tempo of the Cram, and Sableye is so important for setting up numbers. It can get you back onto an even prize map quite easily, but if we are using Cram for early game knockouts into, you know, like Charmanders, Mew, Pidgeys, that sort of thing, you can Lost Mine other floating basics to get yourself back onto even prizes whilst representing a single prize Pokemon in the active, forcing boss's orders from the opponent. But also, you're Lost Mining Charizards, Entei, even the Pidgeot to an extent. You're putting them into easier thresholds of a knockout via that Burning Darkness. So I think that's absolutely huge. It also gives you that coverage of not requiring boss every single turn of the game, because a lot of the time in the Charizard v Charizard matchups, you're kind of just bumping into each other for like roughly that 210, 240 sort of range. And if you're hitting that number, you often need to boss something back up. But by having Psychic Sableye in the list, you can finish off a Charizard that you've hit previously with a Burning Darkness, whilst then forcing your opponent back into the situation of having to boss you back. And if they're playing boss, they're not playing Iono, which means you get to keep your hand. And as a Lost Zone build, that is massive, because it means then you're in control of the likes of Roxanne. It means you can be Colressing towards your next candy combo. All this stuff just falls into place. So the fact that you have more single prize Pokemon in the Charizard matchup that are usable, because otherwise it's just a late game Radiant Charizard, which is kind of fine. But with this build, we get to weave them in much more frequently and be a lot more in charge of the prize map, really trying to force the opponent into a situation where they take 5 prize cards ideally, because then the Burning Darkness deals 330 and knocks out a Charizard EX cleanly, even if it's just been set up that turn. So yeah, that's why I like this Charizard build. It also really impressed me in Barcelona anyway. I was really looking forward to testing this ever since I got back from Barcelona, and I have been able to do so and made some tweaks of my own, trying to streamline the deck list, because I'll still admit that this is combo based and not like the most consistent deck in the game, but I think it is consistent enough to get that Spit Innocently pressure, and just because it's Charizard, it's such a bulky and difficult Pokemon to deal with, it's just sometimes sets up checkmates, and I feel like it does it a little bit better than Lost Zone Tina actually in the game right now, just for the stats on the Charizard and the fact that it can just sit there smacking at times, even if you're getting hand disrupted. Like sometimes Tina has to reload because it Lost Zones its own energy and stuff, and sometimes you're waiting for Rod to be able to unlock Gate and this, that, and the other. I think Charizard does this a lot more streamlined and just kind of sits there and does its thing once you actually hit those candy combinations. A lot of games to be shown today, because there's going to be 3 at the end of the video, which are all going to be going up against the Charizard Pidgeot build because it's super popular on ladder. So that should really reinforce the fact that I think it's a strong matchup. That's enough rambling for today though. Enjoy the games, and I'll see you tomorrow for another one. Cheers. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. So here we are in our first game. We have a Radiant Greninja start, and not too much else going on. We have Nest Ball, Switch Cart, and an energy, so I can at least conceal and possibly get a Comfey in. Our opponent leads with Mew. Could be a lot of things in the format right now. And we're going to start with the concealed cards, and we actually get the Battle VIP Pass, which is going to open up this hand quite a bit, where we can get double Comfey now. We even got another Switch Cart, so we can begin our flower selecting quest, which is pretty nice. Going to get the Payment of Retreat in for another select here, and banking a candy to hand seems pretty solid when I already have Ultra Ball, so I'm ready for a turn 2 Zard, which is looking pretty nice. Mew could be all sorts. Could be Charizard, could be Gardevoir, could be a ton of other stuff, to be honest with you. We see Psych Energy, though, into Iono, so I have to assume this is going to be a Gardevoir variant. They whiff on the Mysterious Tail, just hitting a Super Rod, which isn't ideal for them. And yeah, more confirmation that it's Gardevoir with the Zacian discard. We see Manaphy and Roltz come down, so at least the opponent is protecting themselves around Rope here. And we can Artisan out to that Charmander, so we have that secondary option. And we are able to select back into a Colress. Of course, we reset the deck with the Artisan, which was pretty important because we just had one in hand before. We can now Candy Zard again, which is looking really nice. Also, just thinning the deck of Fire Energy is so huge. It gives us that easy pivot now, and it just gets us in swinging with Charizard early. I do actually have enough in the zone, I believe, to swing with a Cram instead and keep Charizard on the bench, which is nice. I actually hit a Jet Energy, so I can get one more dip with Flower Selecting. It's Rod versus Psychic, and because we already have a Psychic in the bin, we'll take the second Rod. 6 in the zone, so it's looking like a pretty nice Cram play. I actually am going to reload with Super Rod early, just because we know we're up against a deck that does like to Iono quite often, and with the Greninja developed on board, it's always nice to see more energy just for more cycle with Radiant Greninja. Pretty nice prize, grabbing the Zardy X as well, so we've got off to the races pretty well here. We'll see how the opponent responds. The opponent is going to Artazon out of Ralts. They are committing a reversal energy, and they had to research away another rod, which really hurts. So probably a top deck from them, which is a little bit ugly. But they can at least Mirage Step out a couple Curlier here, which is going to at least develop their board that little bit and make it slightly tricky for us. We already have the guaranteed knockouts. We can even candy into another Zard, which is insane. So we've really set up the board quite nicely here, and we thin the deck of a ton of energy. Colress just gets a ton of supporter cards, but it means we have boss for later, and we will just continue to swing with Cram. One thing we are slightly concerned about, yes, they have just already got rid of one reversal energy, but it is possible for a Shining Arcana Gardevoir to knock out even Charizards with reversal energy, so got to be a little bit careful of that one. So it's still nice to come in early with the Cram pressure. We're going to collapse away Greninja. The reason why I'm doing this is because I am slightly scared of potential Mew EX plays the opponent could come up with. So it's always nice to be a little bit aware of that option in the back of your mind for a ton of matchups now. So I'm also happy that I've thinned so many energy out of the deck with the Charizard itself that I didn't think Greninja's getting as much value as just flower selectings at this stage of the game, because we still want to work towards 10 for Sableye, because that's just another way that we can threaten a Gardevoir player. They are able to Arcana a Psychic Energy to their Guardy, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't change a huge amount here, seeing as though they can easily get through the Cram regardless. It might allow them to Cress a little bit more effectively, because they can leave this completely undamaged now. And we are going to see the Moonglow reverse. They have to embrace one more time, that's fine. And then they can take out a Comfey. Even going to turn attach proactively onto the Arcana Guardy, which is a good idea, so that they can get that nice and prepared. We can Switch Cart into Comfey here. And we are just going to make sure we don't start bricking, basically. If we can hit boss here as well, we're just laughing. We hit Colress, which is okay. So we are going to have to go for a single prize Pokemon, which is a little bit awkward, because we had a really nice prize map lined up, but we basically have to take a turn off here, and gives our opponent the opportunity to take a 2-prize knockout with an Arcana Guardy, which is quite scary, actually. When Guardies get drawing, they really are something. See the refinements. They're getting pretty low on deck size as well. Their hand size is obviously massive. There's another Shining Arcana coming in. Then we have Level Ball just failing the search. Then Nest Ball. Is this also going to be a fail? Yep, just thinning more cards that they don't want to draw back into. Gonna see some Embraces just to retreat, one would imagine. Now, do they have the reversal energy required here? They can put 6 on, which is 240. Oh no, actually, because they hit from Arcana, right? They can get there. 6. Oh, they have reversal, okay. Could they have done it 6, 7, 8? What am I doing? 6, 12 plus 240. Yeah, they could have done it anyway. Okay. But it is going to be the reversal energy. And we actually take boss off the top. It was actually looking really likely anyway, because we could get to 7 cards in deck, then Pokégear. So I think we're checkmating now, especially with that search of Sableye. We have the Lost Mine ready to go on multiple threats on their board now, with the Curly and the heavily damaged Guardy. And we can boss KO, and that seems like checkmate from there, which is looking really solid. So no need for the Pokégear. We were able to get over the line quite nicely there. Is there any way that they could do this? They've already played the Collapse Stadium, so I don't think there's any way that they could deny us at this stage. There's no Pokemon that's tanking Charizard in their deck, and Sableye is also able to take at least the active knockout at any time. So, yeah, nice checkmate against Gardy. You saw just the Cram pressure was really what pole vaulted us ahead, and then Charizard has a great option to get through the EX as well throughout the game, which is nice. And it just helps set up the board. That's what I love about just Rare Candy and Zard. It's such high value, just because you get to retreat Comfey as well as get your Zard up, which is just massive for a Lost Zone deck. We're getting into the next game then. We're up against a Rapid Strike deck. We can Panic Select, and at least we hit Charmander. But yeah, really not the best opener for us. Just one Comfey, and no real great supporter for next turn. Just relying on this Pokégear, really. The opponent starts with Urshifu, and they're able to VIP out Intel and Remoraid. They already have Zam, and they have a Research, so a really strong start from them. Also see Heavy Ball for another Inteleon V. This is... oh, and a VIP pass. It's the true Rapid Strike pop-off, by the looks of things. Even going to see, wow, full tempo. Tower of Waters into the Surf for 40. Really dangerous to get this damage prepped. Fortunately, we held on to Switch Cart turn 1. And our selecting was huge as well, actually. We were able to grab Colress. That's why I'm going to Pokégear first, just to improve my odds of finding Candy or Ball Search there. I just wanted to thin a supporter out of the deck, and it also can inform my decision for Colress that little bit more as well. Because we have Switch Carts, and I really need to use one this turn, we are just going to search out another Comfey here. And go for a selecting again, and we do fortunately hit the Rare Candy. The opponent hasn't taken a knockout, so we're not knocking out this Inteleon, but we are putting a really good chunk into it. And their board is full as well, so they don't have easy access to Luminion Cheryl plays if they just like evolve up and do stuff. Having a small debate whether or not I should attach Jet Energy there, just to have an energy prepped somewhere. But it could just end up being the Pokemon that they Yoga Loop anyway, so we choose to hold the Jet Energy for now. And the opponent's carrying on with an insane start. They have VMAX Octillery, and they tutor out Rapid Strike Energy. But fortunately, they don't have any Waters, so they are just going to punch into the active here. So we do have a knockout lined up on their VMAX. So we really have to tread carefully, especially with an energy on the benched Urshifu. That's really scary for us. There's the option of Jet or Greninja here. We're going to grab Radiant Greninja. It's going to draw us a couple more cards. We still are keeping that Artazon open, because I might want to Manaphy here, especially with damage that's going to stay on this Charizard. I can at least heal the 10 from the Comfey, and I'm taking out the Intel, so they can only go Double Gunner plus Spoons plus... so they're not in Yoga Loop range of the Manaphy here. Even with the damage prepped on Zard. I'm also going to reload some energy just in case I get hand disrupted and I want concealed cards value. And we'll take 3 prizes. Really nice response there. Picking up a couple more Switch Carts from the prize is huge as well, because it's a great thing we can do to defend ourselves that little bit more. The opponent is just going to reload another Inteleon by the looks of things. They're also going to Painful Spoon off Zard onto Manaphy. And that's all it is going to be. So fortunately, they're a little bit light on supporters now. I guess they couldn't risk using Octillery for Karina there, because they had to guarantee a VMAX. So that's the only good news for us, really, is that they don't have much outside of Rapid Strike Energy in hand. And that's why we're going to go for Boss Octillery here. And just take the knockout. Just try and put them on a worse hand. There was an argument there to play Switch, play Cart again or whatever to protect the Manaphy, but I'm not that worried really of the Yoga plays, especially because they put energy back into the hand. They don't have tutor for Stadium and this, that, and the other, so they would have had to start the turn with Medicham, and we know they didn't have water energy to start with, so they basically had to have risked Medicham and top deck to supporter, which basically just never happens, right? So we're pretty okay to save the cart for additional value. We're going to Artazon just to scout a little bit before going for some flower selectings. I think this turn is definitely a good turn to switch cart, though, to protect ourselves that little bit more. We have that switch into another flower selecting. We really don't need Cram at this stage. But I don't know if I actually have access to Psychic Energy right now. We actually end up getting the Cram refund, which might end up being our better attacker, unless I forego an attack altogether. I could also swing with Scratch for 20 on Sableye. If I do that, I'm putting the Intel into 300, which is actually a good number for Charizard. And as I'm benching Charmander, I think it means that we are going to be going for a Scratch play here. I think it's actually pretty good for the situation that we're in. Missing Psychic Energy is obviously sad. I would prep up a pretty nice way of dealing with Medicham over a couple turns. But failing that, we can at least go for this poke of 20, trying to set up Charizard EX if the opponent takes a double prize knockout here. So, as it happens, they're actually spooning off the Manaphy onto the Sableye so that they can keep the energy on board for GMAX Spiral, which is looking pretty okay for us. We just need to... Oh, yep. We just need to draw into Rare Candy now, I think, to be able to close the game. We picked up Boss. There's Fire Energy. We can conceal as well here. And we have Jet also already in hand. We can even... oh, we're Rotting Bats of Fire. Oh, yeah, we did draw into the Candy. There you go. I just didn't see it because our hand was getting too large. But there we go. We can reload the next Charizard and Boss's orders onto the Manaphy or the Intel for the final two prizes against Rapid. Definitely a scary deck, but they were kind of supported us a little bit there. After a really good like pop-off with Pokemon, they never had the opportunity to artillery for Karina. Don't know if it was prized or don't know if they're just working with guarantees rather than risking anything else. Let's get into our third game, and we have a Charmander VIP Pass start, which isn't too shabby. We're up against a Lugia build. It's looking pretty good. We get a freebie, and our opponent leads with Radiant Charizard, which can't be good. And off the mulligan plus draw for turn, we get a second VIP Pass, so we are popping off this game. The one thing we don't really have is much energy going on right now. I can go full board. A little bit of a risk to go full board straight away because there could be a window of opportunity for me to have got a Cram hit in at some point. We are just going to get the Comfey though nonetheless. And thanks to mulligans, I was fairly happy getting rid of the Manaphy. You have to be a little bit worried that our opponent can play Mew EX and boss the Radiant Greninja. And I will have no defense against that now. So that's playing on the back of my mind. But it's kind of what we had to do to get set up in the opening stages. I think maybe it was too greedy for me to Artazon first, the Comfey out. I probably should have done selectings, then kept the board space open. Maybe end of turn, get a Cram out. But we have ended up having Ultra Ball Candy, so I can swing with the Charizard next turn if we get to keep this hand. And Lugia really doesn't very often Iono, right? The opponent gets Snorlax and Lugia with Jet Energy, so they can come in to read the wind here. Oh, they actually do Iono us, which is a real shame, because our hand was really well set for a Candy Zard, and Lugia really doesn't like using Iono in the opening stages if they can help it. They're looking to research or Burnett or whatever. And they end up on a Mesagoza Tails into a Read the Wind, so they whiffed on getting a second Archeops in the bin. We flip our Mesagoza, that also gets Tails, and let's see if we can get towards this Rare Candy. One's been put to the bottom, and I don't have any way to shuffle the deck unless I use a Pokégear there, but it didn't seem very good. We can select, there are still other candies, obviously, just lower odds now. Going to keep the Psychic Energy around, and we can conceal the Psychic as well. We've drawn a lot of cards here. We've seen 2, 4, 6, 11. This is 12, 13, but we do miss the Candy piece, which is sometimes what happens with Stage 2 decks. And it does go back to the fact that I could have just had a guaranteed Cram hit here, which would have been a really nice setup to two-shot this Lugia. So I've lost a little bit of the tempo that we started off with here, which is a bit of a shame, but our opponent gets a Tails or Mesagoza, which might make life a little bit more tricky for them now. Let's see if I can still get to summon the chaps. It's going to be Ultra Ball, gets rid of Fish and Lugia V. is going to be Archeops, which means they probably have Research or another Ultra Ball here. Currently one in the bin. See, double turbo to the Lugia, and they do play Collapse, and this is a great window of opportunity for us to get rid of Radiant Greninja, so I'm not worried about late game Mew shenanigans. They do rip the Research, and looks like they were able to get rid of an Archeops here, so they can summon for full value. So it looks like they'll be Tempest diving here. It's like Gift Energy completes the 4 for the Lugia. That's going to be another Primal Turbo. Preloading and Energy on Snorlax. Which is looking all pretty reasonable. We have another like 9-card dig towards Candy here. Hopefully we can get that rolling. So we are going to let one Charizard go. We have the other 2 already in hand. The Colress does enable us to Rare Candy up now, which is looking pretty nice. We will just take a quick peek at our energy remaining, because we have Greninja'd a few times and we've lost zoned a couple. Have to be a little bit careful about that. Looks like we're going to get the 1 energy Infernal Rain here and commit our turn attachment to the Charizard as well. And then we'll just come in and swing for 210. Like I said, not ideal because we could have cram hit on the previous turn had I not have bench locked myself. So, one of those things. But at the same time, like, my hand was really good and you don't expect to get Iono'd by Lugia turn 1 too often. So, it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Regardless, they're beginning to power up Snorlax. And they're using another turbo here. They're actually powering up an Archeops as well. Interesting. That tells me they're probably playing Weird EV because they're preloading energy. And whenever you preload energy, it's because they're playing a colorless build, right? We already know they're colorless with the Charizard and the Snorlax, so I would expect a Weird EV at this stage. So I really have to make sure that I'm just taking out the energy all the time so that Charizard can't just be immediately knocked out by that. We whiff a Candy from this Colress, which is a bit of a shame, but I am just going to develop another Charmander and finish off the Lugia, hoping that our opponent has to play a Boss's Orders here rather than hand disrupt us, because our hand is a stupid size right now. You can barely even see all the stuff in hand because it's taking up the whole screen. But let's see what they can come up with. It's going to be Luminous to the Radiant Charizard. Still not quite ready to go. But they do go for the Boss's Orders. And take out Charizard EX here with a nice thump. More than likely. Do they have anything else they want to do here? Nope, just going to thump through the Charizard, which means we can Raihan for Candy here. And that is going to be what we go for. We can also load back our next Charizard. Also give ourselves the option to Sableye with Psychic Energy in the deck now. Going to also pre-bench the Sableye and finish off this Snorlax. Because, again, I think the only thing we're a little bit afraid of now is if they just have like enough single prize attackers to just churn through us. We definitely want to make another Charizard, try and Roxanne them on a turn we like knock out the Charizard specifically, because it requires Luminous, so you can't gift energy a Charizard. So if we can deal with Zard on a hand disruption turn, we're going to be in a lot better shape. I actually don't know if we have the Roxanne in hand though. I think we need to, sorry, in deck. I think we need to take that from prizes to have a really good shot here of feeling comfortable about ourselves. The good news is they have to two-shot this Charizard and then knock out something else. And ideally we're just going to give them more and more Charizard to deal with, so hopefully that's going to work out in our favour. Our opponent capturing Aromas for a Luminion V though, that's interesting because we're on 3 prizes. And oh wow, they're actually putting it into play. And they're going to grab Boss, which I'm not too afraid of. I'm much more afraid of hand disruption here than boss. They probably need to two-shot the active here. But their prize map is so much more difficult now that they have put some multi-prizes into play for us. They're going to get the Lax ready to thump, and they're going to proactively boss, actually, bossing up Charmander now. Also going to see another Capturing Aroma. It's going to get a Lugia just for some thinning by the looks of things. And it's just going to be the thump. Okay, so they are one Charizard knockout away. I probably have to go through the active because of two things, actually. I need to take energy off the board for Weirdeer, but I also don't want to boss proactively this turn because I'm walking into a Mew EX copying Burning Darkness. So I have to make sure I only take a single prize knockout this turn. So all I can do here is play cards to play around hand disruption and hope we don't get Iono'd. / if we do, I still have draws from Comfey with Rope and Jet Energy and such that I can still get over the line here. If our opponent Iono's us, I'm actually not feeling too great about the situation though. We'll see what happens here. We did take Roxanne from our prize though, so that's another thing we could draw back into, and we could do a Roxanne knockout the Charizard, and then hope they don't have Gust if we just go into a single prize and next turn, do some prep damage on something and like hunt for boss on 2 turns. So that's something you have to bear in mind. Charizard doesn't want to get sneakily knocked out by its own Burning Darkness. That's why we have to take the slightly more awkward prize map here, so that we're not walking into a Mew EX play. It would have been so obvious to just rip the boss there, but then your opponent can come back and make you look foolish with Mew. So we see an Artazon here. The Charizard's in the active. Definitely a good window of opportunity to weave in this card. And there is the Weirdeer, but I don't think they have enough energy. They've got through too much. They had an Echoing Horn as well. That wouldn't have changed anything, I don't think. And with a research, I think we're pretty safe here. They didn't have access to Iono, which means we have a very easy path to boss now. It looked more comfortable because they didn't have hand disruption there. I think if they do disrupt, they're in a really decent spot, actually. We had a bit of dig here and there. Didn't have the Greninja on board, though, because, again, we were trying to protect ourselves against Mew. But, yeah, have to keep in mind the attacks that can be burst onto the field. So be very aware of your prize map against Lugia, because otherwise things can get dicey. Now, for the second half of the video, I want to talk about the Curitiba winning Charizard EX Pidgeot Forest Sealstone build. It's littered the ladder tonight, so I've played against it a ton, and it feels like we're quite favoured into the matchup. So I wanted to show off a few games that I had tonight here. Obviously, this is going to be quite a good game for us because we started triple VIP pass, so maybe that's high variance, but our start is looking really strong here. And these are all going to be against the new Forest Sealstone build. And I basically feel like we have a small advantage just because we have early attacking threats from Cram when need be. And also, looks like a tough selecting there. Not really knowing what I was up against. Rod versus Manaphy. Especially because I put Greninja down. It's always a little bit of a risk getting rid of Manaphy. But we're going to see our opponents... Like, I saw Lumineon, and that gives me a bit of information that it's probably either Lugia, which could play Mew, or this new Charizard deck, and it was the ladder, like, the night of the lists coming out, so everyone was playing this Charizard deck. I played it against it a lot today. The opponent gets to use that Arven for a second VIP. They can also retreat into Mew now. I'm really happy that I get to keep my Candy Zard hand, though. That's going to be massive for us, as the opponent tails for an Ultra Ball to help them next turn. But yeah, looking really solid, actually. We can Candy Zard to thin the deck of some energy before this flower selecting and get our attacker ready to rumble. Looks like we prized a ton of energy, actually. We, yeah, prized 3 energy. 3 fire energy. It's pretty nutty. And we ripped the boss, actually, so I can take the very early Lumineon KO here. We already had a very nice turn lined up with the Colress, but we do go for the Burning Darkness now. And fortunately, we're able to take far off prizes. That's going to be pretty nice. We could reload with Rod as well on a future turn. That is one small headache of the Forest Hill Stone build. Sometimes they need to weave in the fish. The Entei is a bit less vulnerable because it has 230 hit points, so it sticks around on board. Actually, it's quite good in the Charizard mirror. Quite a bulky dude. But we were able to take the 2-prize initiative here, and it's really important to stay on a 2-prize map in the matchup if you can, because otherwise you're walking into a Charizard 1-hit KO from the opponent. So the prize mapping is really important for this deck and this matchup. The opponent's going to rip another research. They've got Candy Pidge, Candy Zard, even without the Forest Hill Stone being live, and they are just going to hit into our Charizard, which makes sense. We can get to work on expanding our own hand size and working towards this lost zone, because that's one thing that we have in the matchup that's huge. We have, firstly, Cram early game pressure, which we didn't need this game because we went first and hit Candy. But also we have Sableye, which can really make some cute math happen for us throughout the game to set Charizards in range. We actually let one go there so I can Candy Zard. One thing we have to be aware of is that they are going to be able to Iona you as and when throughout the game. So guaranteeing this Candy Zard makes sense here. Just so that we have this prepped and ready to rumble. Also going to go for the Switch Cart proactively. Again, trying to help us out against hand disruption. So I have a pivot in that Comfey. And we're going to try and two-shot this Charizard. It's much better to attack the Charizards than the Entei, especially when the opponent hasn't taken any prize cards yet, because they are packing the Penny, and that can be a way for the opponent to take a free turn against you. I feel like that would have been a huge card in a closed deck list situation for players in Brazil not knowing that there was a Penny waiting in the wings. But now we know that it's in the list, we get to play around it, which is pretty important actually. We're going to see the Forest Hill Stone activation now as well for the Super Rod to reload some energy by the looks of things before another Candy Zard. And it's going to be Infernal Rain again. So it looks like Entei is going to get powered up here for a swing. Also powering up both Charizards in the back. And yeah, we do get hit for 200 here. So we're in a bit of a precarious spot now. We're at 6 cards in the Lost Zone. We can get to 10. And that would be pretty massive for us, actually. Because I really don't want to hit this Entei. Because, like I said, we just walk into a Penny. So the Colress into Rope Select, look for Switch Card, seems pretty good here. And try and get a Lost Mine in. I could also conceal away the Jet Energy if I really had to work towards a Switch Card. Because what I want to do here is I want to make my opponent firstly take a single prize knockout. We actually pick up the boss for a future turn, which is looking nice. I probably have to conceal the Jet now. We're just going to retreat into the selecting first. And we do rip the Switch Card, which is really nice. Means that we can go into the Sableye now with 10 in the Lost Zone. And basically I just want to set everything up. If I put 3 onto Charizard, that's going to make things a little bit easier. 2 onto Entei means that after opponent just takes a single prize knockout, we're knocking that out now. And we're also going to put some excess counters on the Pidgeot. Now I think I actually made a small mistake here. I set the Charizard on the right-hand side down to 120. I should have put that down to 110 because I've already lost a Sableye to the Lost Zone, and the deck, our opponent's deck does play Lost City. So I think that was one small mistake there. There should be 10 less on Pidgeot, 10 more on that Charizard. It would have set me up much nicer for a Cram Boss Spit Innocently line. And that is actually going to become important because the opponent does Lost City us right now. And that is our second Sableye, which is a little bit awkward. Because we are limited to just one boss for the remainder of the game, and going into the Charizard that they have, they've played around our Sprinkle quite nicely, to be fair to them. It's going to make our game plan a lot worse, actually, because I probably have to hit into this Charizard over 2 turns. We should still be okay, but it's going to be a little bit resource intensive on our Charizards. I might need to make another Charizard this game, which is looking quite ugly. That's why you're seeing such a difficult choice here. The Roxanne is still good, even with a Pidgeot being live, because you just stop combos happening. So we are just going to forego the gear and the jet energy and swing into this Charizard. So now everything on their board is very well set up. It's just that they can bring in their Entei next, and that blocks Cram. It would force me into using Charizard again. I basically just need to cash in on Charizards whilst they're on the board. I also wasn't able to bounce the Lost City, so this Charizard EX will be Lost Zoned. And there's already one in the Lost Zone, I believe, so it's going to make it hard for me to reload a third Charizard, actually. I need to bounce this Lost City next turn. The opponent goes for an Arven line here. They're just going to grab a Rare Candy proactively, and they are going to take the knockout. So they're behind on prizes, but they're still okay on board, actually. We're going to go for the Cram, bench Charmander, and just go for the rocks here, really hoping for Stadium. Unfortunately, we do hit the Artazon, so I can take the knockout now, force the opponent to quick search for Boss, and it means I get to hold my hand so that I can go for a Super Rod reload of this Charizard. So what we're really hoping is from this 3-card hand, actually they also have fleet-footed, we have to really hope the opponent doesn't have access to Lost City plus Boss. If they do that, they probably actually win the game. Because I should have 10 more damage on that Charizard, but I didn't. Because we would be locked here, right? If I didn't waste the 40 damage on the Pidgeot and had more on that Charizard, I would just have an easy Cram boss line. But because we messed that up, we have to go for the Super Rod YOLO Swaggins with Charizard here. We have to conceal cards and hope that Charizard isn't our bottom deck to win the game. So it's a 33% to lose. We fortunately get the good side of RNG, and we can reload the Charizard and have just enough resources to get over the line there to take a win. That was definitely my scrappiest win that we had against the Charizard matchup, and it's because I misused my Sable math, basically because I figured I could reuse a Sableye, but obviously they play the Lost Cities, so I kind of was negligent in that regard. Let's get into another of these matchups then, because I do think it's really important, right? This list has just done very, very well in Brazil, littering the top cut, with 3 of this build, then 2 arc builds of the deck. So it seems really important to know that you're favored in the mirror, and it feels like the Lost Zone variant is. Certainly it's the aggressor, and it feels like being the aggressor is strong in this matchup. Obviously, having to navigate Iono is a little bit scary at times, but it feels like you have a small advantage, as the opponent was able to get Mysterious Tail, get some VIP, and get rocking on their side of things. Looking pretty nice. I'm going to have a look through our resources. Looks like 1 Candy's prize, which is a little bit awkward. We just saw how important it is to get triple Lizard at times in the matchup. We unfortunately conceal into the 2 non-Colress supporters. And then we have Fire versus Switch Cart as a debate. We take the cart because just in case we get another energy, I could Artazon into a Comfey. We're going to let a Charizard go, which is a little bit sad, but it means I can develop double Charmander now. Seeing as though we can't Colress, we should just go double Charmander to play around the easy boss play, right? And sit on the hand. There is a Psych Energy in the discard pile, so Raihan is live to help us make a Charizard next turn. I could Raihan to the Comfey, the Psychic Energy quite happily, and just pay retreats if need be. The opponent does get to Candy Charizard, powering up this Entei. And Entei really is a headache for the mirror, actually. It seems like such a crucial card because they can make you waste the damage because they play the penny. So that's a real thing you need to keep in mind in this matchup. They have a lot of consistency with the Forest Seal Stone stuff, but also they can just waste some early damage, which is a real headache. We see an Arven now as well, so they can also get the Forest Seal Stone value. And I think that might mean even more candies coming down. Our opponent's had a really good start here. Candy Pidge, Candy Zard, and they get to quick search on top of this. We see Ultra Ball. Dang, is this... Yeah, triple turn 2 candy. Definitely a good advert for this list. You can see how it did well. They even get the knockouts with the Entei. So we're at 210 with our Charizard. Not a great number, admittedly. I can Artisan out a Comfey. We rip the Jet, so we have a couple digs here with Flower Selecting. And we actually hit Charizard, which really opens up this hand. Because I can get around the Entei now, which is pretty huge. I probably want to boss the Charizard with 1 energy, because our opponent only Infernal Rain for 2, I believe, on their second Charizard. We have to keep the other boss around, certainly. But 210 is a really good number, because again, it's setting up the Sableye as well. So even though we play only 2 copies of Boss's Orders, because we have the Sableye, it's very quick and early for us to get online with the 210 to really set up the Sable math. The opponent can quick search now. If they didn't Iono into Rod, they may not even have access to a Fire Energy here. They may have to Rope. Oh, it is going to be the Super Rod for the energy reload. But they may have just low rolled here. Not Ionoing into an energy means that they may not have... You know, they've just had to quick search. So yeah, actually just a pass. So scouting and bossing the correct target there was really huge for us. I feel like the Rod may have been the wrong quick search target. If they had Rope or any pivot option in the deck, I feel like that definitely was better just to get hit in on our Charizard than reloading Fire. But regardless, we're going to fly ahead now in the prize race, being able to take our first 2 on a Charizard, which is pretty massive. We can also develop our Lost Zone that little bit more, which is also pretty huge. We don't actually end up doing much outside of that. We are just going to take the 2 prizes with our Charizard EX. But yeah, all things considered, pretty good to buy that free turn. The opponent can get a cheeky Fleet-footed in. Entei's still a really solid option this turn as well. They could swing into the active quite happily. Because, again, they're still at 210. Oh, sorry, we're still at 210 with Burning Darkness. And they're just going to hit us for 200. Seems reasonable. We do have ropes, but ropes aren't ideal. I think the best thing we can do is maybe get to 10 in the Lost Zone and try and use a Sableye. We don't have Psychic Energy currently in hand, but only 8 cards in deck. We have a decent shot at grabbing that. We have 2 ropes to try and help things out as well. All I know is I definitely don't want to hit this Entei, because again, it's a free turn for them if they can just quick search for the penny at any time. So it's basically a no-go. Never hit Entei, just let him be until they've taken more prize cards, and then he's great to knock out. We do get to grab the Psych Energy from our Rope Select, so that's worked out really nicely. And now we have a decision of where we want to put this damage. Again, you never really want to touch the Entei unless you're putting it in range of 210. Small argument to knock out Mew here, but I think this works out pretty well. Putting the 90 puts the Charizard into 240 range, which if the opponent takes out another prize, we're hitting 240. We put the Pidge to 270 as well for an easier boss prize later, and the Entei also gets a couple counters on it as well. So I think this was also a great opportunity to weave in the Sableye. The opponent does bounce our Artisan with a Lost City. I feel like they probably have to hand disrupt us right now. They actually go for the boss instead and just take out Charizard, which means we get to sit on a stupid hand size, which is great. I can Raihan for Candy and just take a knockout. I'd then be going down to 2. I'd still have boss available. They basically can't use their Charizard against us. They'd have to use Radiant Zard into us and have to dodge boss. Let's have a look. Definitely going to Raihan. Definitely going to grab that Candy. Let's make the Zard. That's fine. We are going to bench the Sableye. There was actually... I possibly could have Raihan to this other Sableye, so maybe a small misstep there. Rather than candying to the active. Because I actually do go for the Rod anyway, just to establish concealed card options for when we get hit with Iono next turn. Because they basically have to Iono us, right? They have to hit with Radzard plus Iono to have a chance of winning this game. But they're actually playing 60 hit point Charmanders, which was what did well in the most recent tournament. But in 151 format, which is what the online meta is, they should play 70 hit point Charmanders like us. So yeah, I'm just confirming that they're playing the old Manders. But it looks like the opponent is in a situation where they don't really want to attack with anything here. We've basically nullified their Charizard EX. And we've nullified their Pidgeot. So they 100% have to hit with Radzard, but it looks like they're going for a mobile trapping play, so they could Gust Greninja, but we still have Switch Cart and Jet in hand, so that won't do anything. So it looks like we've just got them covered thanks to our one Lost Mine turn. Yeah, energy to Mawile. It's going to be Trap Greninja. It really doesn't matter at this stage. If they play a boss, we know we win. I feel like if they had access to Iono, Charizard swing into Radzard into our Charizard was probably the better line, but there we go. Depends what was in their deck. Let's have one more game with the mirror then, just to really establish that I'll be winning it a lot today. Like, obviously, I really respect the new list from Brazil, and I think it's really powerful, actually. Like, we just saw a triple candy turn 2. Like, that's just insanely strong, right? And it seems really consistent as well. It's setting up every time I play against it. So we don't exactly have the consistency on our side, but we do just have the aggression and flexibility of our Lost Zone attackers, which I think puts this matchup slightly ahead for us. We're going to get underway with a VIP, couple selectings here. Going to protect this Sableye. We're going to Artazon out a Cram for some early pressure. Also going to slam the Sable down just in case we get hand disrupted. And pass over. The opponent has the Call for Family Pidgey, which might help their initial setup here, if they choose to go for that. They already have Charmander and VIP Pass and our Artazon, so shouldn't be too tricky. And again, confirmation that it's the Forest Seal Stone build. But this time they are playing the updated basics. We then see Arven for VIP Forest. What an insane turn 1. For Mew plus Pidge. So now they don't even need to call for family. They could just retreat into Mysterious Tail if they wanted. Or just keep Pidgey active, knowing that they can tail for Candy next turn. But they just pass things over. They don't even play the Forest Seal Stone because they're worried about potential lost vacuums, I suppose. We are definitely looking for Candy Zard, and we are able to hit that, which is great. This is also going to allow us to get a Cram swing in, so that's also fantastic. Pretty good turn 2 for us as well. We're just going to load up the Charmander because we are holding on to Jet Energy. So we're going to get our Lost Zone quest underway. Try and also get a supporter for next turn into the hand. Don't quite get that, but we can go for another Zard for a future turn. I am going to go into the Cram as expected, just to take the easy prize and try and force our opponent onto that odd prize map, which is so awkward in this mirror because if ever your opponent gets into that situation where they take 5 prizes, then your Charizard's knocking out everything, no matter what they do, so it really lets you like bump into one of their Charizards, but then their fresh Charizard can be knocked out cleanly as well. The opponent does go for another Arven here, just for even more items and also some fodder, discarding their second Forest Seal Stone because they have the other in hand as well. I'm going to see Candy Pidge, then Forest Seal Stone, so they have plenty of tutor now as well. Looking like they're getting pretty well developed, which has basically been the story of this list. It seems really good at getting what it wants. Then again, I haven't been playing a Path deck all day, so that can also be a small factor. Although Arven can also tutor Vacuum, of course, to help with that. We are seeing the Star Alchemy. You gotta think it's for Candy Zard. And there it is. Gonna see. Infernal Rain can allow them to retreat this Mew. And I'd like to see them swing with Entei. Yeah, definitely looks like the best choice. They can also turn attached to the Charizard, which is great. They can get a cheeky fleet-footed in. And again, it's another turn 2, double Candy, plus swinging with Entei. Really good situation for them. They're going to get a cheeky Artazon in. They're just going to choose nothing for now. And swing into Cram. We are already holding on to Switch Cart, so I'm happy to go into this Comfey. We're in that same situation where we really don't want to hit the Entei. The opponent's only taken 1 prize, so getting around this, well, we pick up Boss. That's going to make things a little bit easier, possibly. But also getting to 10 with Lost Mine would be great. We're at 7. This gets us to 8 with Selecting, and then we could go 9, 10 with Colress. We can Candy Zard as well. I think I've drawn into all my Fire Energy. I think there's none in the deck. Yeah. But we have a pretty nice Colress choice there, getting rid of more Ball Search. We've thinned the deck really nicely. And it is going to be the Sable that I go back into here. And we are going to get ourselves back onto even prizes, because we took out a Pidgey turn 1. And we are setting up the Entei, just in case they want to Gust and hit into a Charizard. We could then knock out the Entei for the 2-10. Whilst also setting up the Charizard EX that they have in play as well. The 10 damage actually probably could have gone onto the Pidgeot in this instance for the 270 threshold. So you always have to keep these numbers in mind, right? Your different multipliers with Burning Darkness, your damage scales up. Like, I've set the Charizard up to the 300 threshold, but there's also the 270 threshold of Pidgeot I could have considered there. It's going to be Lost City bouncing, so they can knock out the Sableye for good, and it's going to be another Arven from them for Candy to get this Charmander into a Lizard. Also going to see a Super Rod reload before the Infernal Rain. The usual stuff. There's Charizard. And it's going to be the knockout. So the opponent is also going on to even prize cards. But we're in really good shape now, right? We can knock out the Entei. And we're then just looking for boss's orders again, really. We're in that similar situation where we just want to thin the deck as much as possible here. Because our opponent is going to be trying to Iono us out of game at this stage. We are going to go for just an Artazon here, just to play it. And we're going to go down to 2 prize cards. But we're in a pretty good situation where we have 2 completely undamaged Charizards, so it's a long... Like, it's a huge amount of turns for the opponent to actually get through us now. Even if we're getting hand disrupted, we can just announce an attack, put them back in the awkward position of having to play around us, then announce another attack, even if things have all gone wrong. So we have a few turns to try and recover this boss to close out the game here. It is going to be a quick search from them. I feel like it has to be hand disruption, right? Yep, it is going to be Iono to 2. Picking up Rope's not bad. Lost City comes in just to deny the Artazon from us, which is a bit annoying because we just picked up the Sableye. But we do have Nest Ball. We have 4 energy in the deck, but they're all good for pivoting our Comfey. So putting down a Sableye opens up Raihan as one of our win condition supporters now that we're swinging into this Charizard. So I like developing the Sableye. It might also bait them into quick searching boss Sableye, which then opens up like an extra flower selecting for us, right? So it might make the opponent think twice about their turn. They really can't go through Sableye though because of their prize map. They basically have to knock out this Charizard EX in front of them, It has to be with their bench Charizard or the Radiant Charizard. They have basically no choice in that matter. They have to move out the way. And they know that they lose the Psych Energy. We have no Psyche in the deck. We just have Rod. But we also have Raihan. Let's see what they quick searched into. It's going to go into their other Charizard. Maybe they just don't have access to any basic fire to use their Radiant with. Or they don't have the next pivot card, that sort of thing. Candy's a useless one, but we do flower selecting immediately into boss's orders. We can then just play the rope to get our Charizard into the active. And we can boss the damaged Charizard on our opponent's bench. So quite fortunate there, but we did still have, you know, 2 Jet Energy, 2 Fire Energy, the boss's orders itself, and we also had Raihan, which was a win con as well, with Psychic for Sableye. So you can see how we're quite favoured in the matchup. We basically just kick off the game a little bit early with Cram Pressure, try and weave in those single prizes so that we are forcing that odd prize route, but also the fact that we can Sableye things into range puts the opponent on that back foot. Certainly be careful of Entei, and certainly respect this new archetype, because it feels like it's really good. I've played against it a lot today on the ladder, so I'll be getting around to that list shortly. But that's it for the Lost Zone variant of Charizard. Let me know what you thought. Longer form video today, but that's because I was so intrigued by this specific matchup, because I feel like people are going to be bandwagoning to Arven Zard rather than Lost Zard, which did very well in Barcelona and has a very respectable result also against itself. So let me know your thoughts down below if it changed your mind on which Charizard is best, and I'll be back tomorrow for another video. Cheers.